Anybody have any questions? Going once, going twice, going three. Okay, we're done. No, in all seriousness, does anybody have any questions?
Mayor Thorn, one of my concerns is we don't see much light industrial growth. And when I see companies like Integrity Post out on the highway, they've grown to over 200 employees, and they expanded into Alderside. You know, I don't see that happening here. We saw Wagner build that warehousing facility. All those warehouses are full of businesses. What are we doing here that we're missing out on this opportunity?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of Integrity Post, so we are working with Integrity Post on a north area structure plan, so kind of that corner where they are and coming in off 338, with the intent of creating more of a home building, that light industrial piece. So we are working with them right now, which is part of the reason we're pushing for that 338 interchange. The other challenge that we have in terms of what you're seeing that is occurring in Alderside and not necessarily occurring here is cost differential. So when we build in Okotoks, there's a different level of standard that's built that we build than the county builds. So that changes land prices. So the lots in our industrial park over by Costco right now, those lot prices are, last time I checked, I think they're about $5,000 an acre, $50,000 an acre, $500,000 an acre. Sorry, I'm getting the sign, so I don't have the number. No, $500,000 an acre, which is substantially higher than what the number is in the county. So that impacts decision making with that. To that, with the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board, which ourselves and Foothills County are members, we're part of what's called a joint planning area. So they've created joint planning areas in that region. So Foothills County and ourselves are working through what that will look like and how we will plan that together. One of my desires, I guess our council's desires, is that we really work and talk about how do we share, regardless of where the land exists, whether it exists in Okotoks or it exists in Foothills County, how do we share in the expenses and the revenue that comes from that? Because industrial growth, bigger tax advantage for communities than residential growth. So it is an important focus for us, but that is part of the key driver right now. The other element is around water. So we are working on changing the story around water. So we do have a complicated water situation in Okotoks. I shouldn't say situation, complicated management that tends to scare developers because they have to do something different here than they do in any other community. And so when you've got property that's here, well, I will take less complicated than complicated. And so that's how it works.
I keep hearing about there isn't a water problem, but I think there is. And bringing water from Calgary, I don't think is going to be that solving the problem because they have a water shortage there. So we're building all these houses here, and they are coming up quite fast. And there's going to be more people coming in. Now there's more tax money coming in. The taxes have been raised, and you're paying this levy on gas. And I don't know, I just feel like there can be more done to lower taxes and to be a little more careful about where the money is going. Because we went to a couple town council meetings, and I mean, it's not a whole lot of money, but like the business survey that was done, that was $21,000. Well, only 32% of the business people did the survey, and I'm sure it's going to be less next year because business people are busy. I don't know if they want to do surveys, and I'm just very concerned.
I appreciate that. So great question. There's a lot that's in there. So I'm going to unpack a little bit. So water, I'm going to leave for Councillor Robinson and Councillor Swansea to talk about how water and development, how all that goes. Part of the piece with water that we get into is because we have an outdoor watering schedule. And I want to be clear, that's not outdoor watering restrictions. It's actually an outdoor watering schedule. We believe, and we've worked, when that came in, we've been 20 years with that outdoor watering schedule. And it came in because we worked with landscape companies around effective turf management. And you do not need to be watering 7 days a week. That is not effective turf management. And so we've implemented that schedule. That schedule is not going anywhere. So when people can't water when they want to water, and we see that a lot from people that move into our community that are new, because they're used to being in other communities that do not have a schedule like we do, it feels like there's a water shortage, but that's not the case. We do manage water, but I'm going to let my colleagues talk about that in the other. In terms of taxes, and I'm going to talk, and I try not to use the words taxes because I actually do see it as an investment in our community. And can you bring up the slide on our receipt for me, Steph? So when we look at it, so it requires us actually look at what we pay in taxes. And I'm going to say all of our taxes. So income taxes and property taxes, which is, as we know, not a complete picture on revenue across all the levels of government. Here in Okotoks, franchise fees is another level of tax. We acknowledge that's another level of tax. We can talk about that differently. When you take a new look, of all the money that you pay out, 60% of it is going to the federal government, 33% of it goes to the province, and 7% of it comes to the municipality. Yet we maintain 65% of the infrastructure that you use every day. So I agree, we need to show fiscal restraint, but I disagree that it always means a tax reduction. So the reason I highlighted these numbers is that even if we as a municipality had a 10% reduction, which is approximately $368,000 on our property tax bill, it would only equate to a 0.07% decrease in your taxes, in your costs, which is about, based on the example that's on this screen, about $18.97 for the year. So what this, when we talk about our services that need to be trimmed, so absolutely we could cut costs, there is absolutely, but that's where I said we need to have that service conversation. What services do we want or not want as a community, which is something that council's been trying to lay the groundwork so that we can effectively have that conversation. So we're going to start to have that conversation this year. But when you take and you look at the receipt that's up here, protective services, it makes up 35% of our budget. That's fire, RCMP, municipal enforcement. Then if you take a look at infrastructure, which is our parks, our roads, planning, transit, engineering, economic development, permits and assessments, that makes up another 36%. And if you add community health in there, which is our recreation facilities, events, programs, libraries, social services, community wellness, it's 19% of the budget. Corporate support makes up the final 10%, and that's where council, finance, and the municipal building falls. So I regularly hear, you're not alone, that you want us to make cuts. But when I ask what the response is as to where you want us to cut, the usual response I get is either it's something that's not related to property tax, so it's a capital project, or that it's council's job to figure out where to cut. Well, I'm going to tell you the 2024 is what we figured out. 2024 budget is what we figured out based on everything that we know. I did bring my budget binder. So this is what makes up a budget binder when we go to look at finances. This is what each one of us gets. These are all the pieces of decision, and it's everything that makes up our corporate budget. And so I'm happy to sit down and go through it with people, and I'm happy to talk about where you want to see us make reductions. So in this particular budget, when we talk about cuts, let me highlight a few things that we did do. So we reduced 2 service levels and reallocated those resources to higher priority areas. We managed service level shortfalls. So when I said we did service reviews, we had service level shortfalls in 4 different areas. And so we had a shortfall in fire, which was about a $510,000 hit on our budget. Safety codes, another 135. Procurement and finance was 210. Transportation was 95. Transit was 250. We had a wage increase that we had no say on for the RCMP, which was another $393,000. We had strategic priorities that we wanted to move in terms of having data so that we could make decisions on service levels, and increasing communications with our community. That was another $230,000. So you compound that with a really competitive job market and 3.3% inflation. We only had $1 million increase, and another 800, of which 800 came from franchise fees and 250 came from our property tax, based on what we said we were going to do. So our organization did find savings and manage expenses. So with that increase, it was a $1.05 million increase, but yet we delivered $1.723 million in value without factoring in the job market or inflation impacts. And with inflation impacts, one thing that I will say, we're seeing it all over the place for us. So to water, you talk about chlorine, which is an important ingredient in our water delivery. We saw increases of chlorine. It went from 69 cents a liter to $1.15. For concrete, it went from $900 a cubic meter to $2,047 a cubic meter. All of those costs we have to manage. And the thing about municipal governments that's different than your province and your provincial and your federal government, I don't get to run a deficit. We have to balance our budget. Our budget is the most transparent piece that's there. Everything I see and do is in that book, and I am happy to share the book. In fact, it's on our website. We debate our budget and everything we're going to do in public. So from a transparency and piece of that, we do a pretty good job of it. I'm not saying that there's not places for us to cut, but the conversation that we have not had as a community is what services do we want to cut? Long answer to your question, but thank you for asking the question because I was well prepared for it. And I think I had a question over here.
Yeah, much less controversial. You mentioned the interchange at 338.
Yep.
I haven't followed all the news because it's been complicated, but can you give us an update? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, so there is a design that is out. I'm kind of looking at Jeremy here a little bit, but there is a design of what the 338 interchange will look like. It is sitting very much with the province. They will decide that. We did get notification last year, early in the year, that they were going to close the medians at 338, 306, and 370. They came back and said, no, we're not going to close those now. So we're kind of in a holding pattern. Our sense of information we're seeing is that we will see something in the 2024 budget at the end of February when the province announces that. So we're kind of waiting to see what that looks like.
So would that impact the development that's planned for 338?
The development on our side, so we know kind of what the design is. So any planning that's happening there is being planned around the proposed design that exists right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if the one doesn't happen, does the other one get put on ice, or?
In terms of the North Area Structure Plan that I mentioned earlier, I don't think so, but it depends on how we navigate through what that interchange is going to look like. The interchange is an important piece for commercial development and industrial development up there because we need safe access, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet. So if you see our MLA or any provincial minister, 338 is what we need as a community, and increased infrastructure funding. But I'll leave you with just 338. Any other questions?
Thank you. So you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned some downtown development that's going to be coming up. Mm-hmm. And then you also mentioned that development would focus on people and not vehicles. So I'm wondering if you could just explain what you mean.
Yeah, I didn't actually put those two things together. I said that as we grow, we're going to be more focused on people than vehicles. The downtown development will be focused on parking improvements and expansion with some different things with that, and our underground infrastructure. So there's from the plaza going here to the art gallery, there's a whole underground infrastructure piece that needs to be done. This is a project that we've delayed now 4 years, because we had kind of planned to do it right when COVID hit, and our business community really asked us to wait. So they're well aware that this is coming, but that's going to be there. In terms of the focus on people and not necessarily vehicles, we're really looking at creating more of that complete community, so that you don't actually need to have a vehicle. You can still have one, but you don't need one to make and access your day-to-day needs. So you're seeing that more if anybody's up and watches what's going on in Darcy and some of the Wedderburn development. There's a lot of people that are walking for groceries, or they're using alternative modes. We're seeing an increase on transit, of people using transit to get groceries, as an example. So the goal is that we're trying to create more hubs with that, and to encourage alternative modes of transportation in our community by creating that complete community. So it's not about saying that vehicles aren't going to be allowed, but we've done a lot of development, and there's a lot of stats out there, and I'm happy to share some of them, that building parking lots actually takes away from the financial base of your community, because a parking lot doesn't pay anything. There's $0 of assessment on a parking lot. And so we build these massive parking lots on prime land for other forms of development, whether that's commercial or not. So it's about rethinking how we manage and plan for vehicles. And so where my statement comes from is we're going to manage and plan for people first, then we'll manage and plan for vehicles, which is a change in planning. Planning has always managed and planned for vehicles first, and then planned for people. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? Alrighty. Now that I've got them all asleep, I'll let Rachel and Brent come up, or Councillor Swenseed and Councillor Robinson come up, and we will talk water and development, and we will all be around after if you have more questions that you just want to ask one-on-one. Thank you.